Desire Under the Elms is a 1924 play written by Eugene O'Neill. Like Morning Becomes Electra, Desire Under the Elms signifies an attempt by O'Neill to adapt plot elements and themes of Greek tragedy to a rural New England setting. It was inspired by the myth of Phaedra, Hippolytus, and Theseus. A film version was produced in 1958, and there is an operatic setting by Edward Thomas. Eugene Gladstone O'Neill, October 16, 1888 to November 27, 1953, was an American playwright and Nobel laureate in literature. His poetically titled plays were among the first to introduce into the U.S. the drama techniques of realism, earlier associated with Russian playwright Anton Chekhov, Norwegian playwright Henrik Ibsen, and Swedish playwright August Strindberg. The tragedy Long Day's Journey into Night is often included on lists of the finest U.S. plays in the 20th century, alongside Tennessee Williams's A Streetcar Named Desire and Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman. Summary of the play. The brothers reveal to Eben they won't be working on the farm anymore, so Eben goes to milk the cows while Peter and Simeon get drunk. Eben returns to the house after seeing his father and his new wife on the horizon. Peter and Simeon decide to leave the farm and sign the papers for Eben. They walk outside, taunt their father, Ephraim, and his new wife, Abby, and then leave for California. Abby begins to explore the house and runs into Eben. They are both attracted to each other but fight over the future possession of the farm. The scene closes with harsh words between Ephraim and Eben. Act 2, Scene 1. This scene takes place outside the farmhouse 2 months later. Abby catches Eben on the way to visit Min, his choice prostitute. She tries to seduce him, but he has only a mind for owning the farm and leaves her. Ephraim enters and is transformed. He is now gentle and is coming around to the idea of Eben owning the farm. Abby gets upset at possibly losing the farm to Eben and claims he was lusting after her. Ephraim wants to throw Eben off the farm, but Abby convinces him that Eben is needed to do the farm work. She then suggests they have a son, and Ephraim promises to give her the farm if she does. She has killed their son. Enraged, Eben condemns her and runs out to get a sheriff to take her away. Abby faints. Act 3, Scene 4. Ephraim wakes up, and Abby tells him she has murdered the baby and that it wasn't his. He becomes detached and says he is going out to work. Before he leaves, Ephraim says she should have loved him and he would have protected her no matter what. Eben comes back and professes that he still loves her but that he told the sheriff. He demands to take some fault for murder. Abby doesn't want him to, but he blurts it out the moment the sheriff arrives. The two get taken away together. Analysis. Desire Under the Elms was inspired by plot elements and characters from the Euripides play Hippolytus. In it, Phaedra, Theseus' wife, attempts to seduce his son, chaste Hippolytus. After this fails and Hippolytus threatens to reveal her unfaithfulness, Phaedra commits suicide. Theseus finds a letter that Phaedra carried accusing Hippolytus of raping her. Enraged, Theseus, using one of 3 wishes that his father Poseidon promised him, curses his son with banishment or death. After Hippolytus is fatally wounded by an encounter with a bull, Artemis arrives to reveal the truth to Theseus, and Hippolytus dies after absolving his father. The characters Eben, Abby, and Ephraim roughly correspond with Hippolytus, Phaedra, and Theseus respectively. Both plays are driven by a love triangle between a father, a son, and a stepmother, and the tragedy arises from misguided actions made by the stepmother. In Phaedra's case it is her lust of her husband's son and the falseness of her letter. O'Neill takes this one step further in Desire Under the Elms and makes Abby's misguided actions the begetting and murder of her child. In Desire Under the Elms, in the light of Strindberg's influence, Marie Hartman also saw strong parallels between Desire Under the Elms and the work of August Strindberg, writing, "At any rate, there is hardly a plot element in the play that cannot be traced to one or more sources in Strindberg." He details several elements of O'Neill and Strindberg's biographies that are similar, and how they manifest in Desire Under the Elms, in addition to naming several specific works of Strindberg's, such as The People of Hemso, The Bridal Crown, and The Son of a Servant. Specifically, he points out very similarly confused relationships with the writer's respective mothers and contentious relationships with their fathers. He also writes, "The basic situation, where the young son has seen his beloved mother worked to death by a hard father and then has had to bear the usurpation of her position by an aggressive stepmother, has its origin in The Son of a Servant." This can be seen in Desire Under the Elms through Eben's opinion that Ephraim worked his mother to death and largely drives the plot. Ephraim Cabot. Character analysis. The antagonist of the play, Ephraim Cabot, who goes by Cabot, is a 78-year-old man who owns a farm in New England in the 1850s and works there with his 3 sons, Simeon, Peter, and Eben. Cabot bought the farm when he was young, despite how unforgiving the land is, because it's so rocky, it requires constant labor to make the land farmable. Though this backbreaking work initially made Cabot despairful, he's a religious man who believes that God doesn't like easy work, so he tenaciously continued to farm. Cabot's ability to survive years of difficult labor on the farm has made him tough, hard, egotistical, and cruel. All 3 of his sons resent Cabot for how hard he makes them work on the farm, and how much he berates them by calling them weak, dumb, unmanly, and sinful for craving easier lives. Eben, in particular, despises Cabot for working more Eben's mother and Cabot's second wife to death on the farm some years ago. Cabot constantly threatens not to let his sons inherit the farm, because he thinks so little of them. At the start of the play, Cabot marries a much younger woman, his third wife, Abby Putnam, but he's blind to the fact that she finds him repulsive and is only interested in inheriting the farm. Cabot's pride prevents him from seeing Abby's true intentions, and she manipulates him easily throughout the play and even has a relationship with Eben behind Cabot's back. Despite his marriages and children, Cabot has been lonely for his whole life, as his belief that God only rewards people who suffer hard lives drives everybody away from him. Even the townsfolk despise him for his mean-spirited attitude. At the end of the play, Cabot convinces himself that it's God's will that he should stay on the farm, remain lonely, and work himself to death. Eben. Character analysis. The protagonist of the play, Eben, is more an Ephraim Cabot's son, Simeon and Peter's younger half-brother, and Abby's love interest. Eben is young and handsome, though he always wears a bitter and resentful expression on his face. He firmly believes that Cabot stole the family's farmhouse from his ma, who died some years ago. In truth, the farmhouse is actually Cabot's, but Eben is stubborn in his conviction. Ma died when Eben was a teenager, after a grueling life of relentless farm labor. Eben thus believes that Cabot worked Ma to death, and he's obsessed with the idea of avenging her death and taking the farm back for himself. Eben senses that Ma's oppressive, maternal energy haunts the farmhouse, as symbolized the elm trees that loom over the home. Eben's desire to let Ma's spirit rest in peace drives all of his actions in the play, but he is so overwhelmed by his feelings of bitterness and resentment that he often acts impulsively and makes bad decisions. He also allows himself to be seduced by Cabot's new and much younger wife, Abby. They fall in love and secretly have a baby boy whom Cabot believes is his own son, and Eben's guilt over this consumes him. Despite being in love with Abby, Eben still suspects that Abby is scheming to take the farm for herself, and when he confronts her about this, he sets off a catastrophic chain of events that leads to both his and Abby's downfalls, as well as their baby's death. Eben's character arc reflects the play's key idea that desire, like Eben's lust for Abby and desire to avenge his mother's death, can lead to rash behavior if left unchecked, and that this kind of behavior can lead to tragedy. Abby Putnam. Character analysis. A beautiful, sensual, and shrewd woman in her mid-30s, Abby Putnam is Ephraim Cabot's third wife and Eben's love interest. Abby was orphaned at a young age and had a hard life, so she wants to inherit Cabot's farmhouse to secure her future. Despite the fact that the play's male characters don't think much of women, Abby easily outwits them all for her own purposes. She convinces Cabot to leave the farm to her if she has a son, and then sets about having a child with Cabot's son Eben, who's much younger, more handsome, and more likely to bear children. Abby successfully seduces Eben one night by promising to be like a mother and like a partner to him, two things that Eben has craved since losing his own mother, Ma, as a teenager. Despite her scheming, Abby genuinely falls in love with Eben, and she's desperate to keep him in her life. Like Eben, Abby is also very impulsive, and her emotionally charged decisions often work against her. Early in the play, for instance, she's overcome by rage when Eben rebuffs her initial advances, and she tells Cabot that Eben tried to seduce her. This later prompts Eben to doubt her loyalties. Abby also impulsively kills her own newborn baby after convincing herself that if her son is dead, she will be ineligible to inherit the farm, and Eben will know that she really loves him. The baby's death leads both Eben and Abby to spiral into impulsiveness, guilt, and rage, underscoring the play's key idea that unchecked desire can lead to impulsive and ultimately tragic behaviors. At the end of the play, the pair affirms their love for each other as leave the farm in handcuffs, presumably to be hanged.